Deafness and Deaf-Blindness, Society and History, Exhibition Panel 2 continued. Annie Florence Dix had somewhat of a less straightforward life before her marriage to George. Baptised in Frome on the 20th of January 1879, Annie was daughter to Sidney John and Emily Dix, a woolen cloth designer and a book folder respectively. It would be a while before Annie, in official documents that is, was observed as being deaf. Annie, at the age of 3, when the 1881 census was taken, had not yet been given a designation of deafness and dumbness. By the time the family had moved to Trowbridge, presumably drawn there by opportunities afforded by the cloth industry. It appears that, interestingly, Annie was recorded twice in the 1891 census. She was first recorded as an inmate at the Deaf and Dumb Asylum in Margate. Despite the name, this institution was a school for young people, aged between 8 and 15, and described itself as a deaf and dumb asylum for the education and maintenance of deaf and dumb children of the poor. Here Annie could have been expected to learn skills such as lip reading, religious studies, and trade work. It may have been that the census was pre-recorded for the institute and that Annie was indeed not present on census night. The institution required parents to support their child's admittance into the Margate institution, as children between the ages of 8 and 15 were elected every 6 months by the Board of Governors, according to a point system. It is interesting that in many cases, these charitable schools and asylums had a similar structure of children being voted and nominated in order to acquire one of the coveted spaces. Could it be that instead of parents and communities viewing these schools as a place to hide away children with disabilities, they actually viewed them as an opportunity for children to develop skills and independence, which they may not have been able to develop in their hometowns and villages? Indeed, some viewed the faraway Margate, close to the sea, as a way for parents and families, perhaps, to forget about the problem of their children with disabilities, however. It seems unfair to place such a severe assumption onto Annie's family. It appears that her family was supportive and caring of her. The second recording of Annie in the census was at the Dix family home in Old Brook House near Stroud in Gloucestershire. It seems that they viewed her as important and present enough to have her recorded on census night, if she was at the institution and not at home. Indeed, it could be argued that Annie's parents may have viewed this attendance of the Margate institution as a good opportunity for her, improving her education and access to skills in a way that they may not have been able to provide. The Dix family lived in a hamlet situated beside Stanley Mills, a huge cloth factory that was functional right up to the 1980s. Annie's father, Sidney, was a successful cloth designer, and her brother, as we find out in the 1901 census, stayed in the family business of textiles as a pattern weaver. The 1901 census was the first family census to record Annie as deaf and dumb. Aged 22, Annie was still living at home with her family, listed as dressmaker. Her father was absent from the house, and we can assume that he returned to Trowbridge as a cloth designer, taking up lodgings as a boarder whilst he worked.